Viridia was a world that seemed like a fever dream, painted by an overzealous artist. An emerald landscape brimming with crystalline forests, rivers that shimmered with silver under the twin moons, and skies that danced with hues of violet and gold. Every blade of grass, every ripple in the water, hummed with a faint bioluminescence that made the planet seem alive. And somewhere in this surreal paradise, Zaya stood, her gaze fixed on the human outpost, nestled like an uninvited guest in the valley below. Zaya, daughter of the High Counselor of the Aetherans, was used to being watched. Her kind considered her a vision of perfection, iridescent skin that glowed faintly under Viridia's moons, eyes like shifting galaxies, and a voice that could soothe or command with equal power. To her, though, it was all an elaborate curse. Everywhere she went, her suitors followed, vying for her attention with increasingly ridiculous displays of strength, intellect, or creativity. The mating rituals of her people were exhausting, and then there was Ethan Clarke. Zaya had first noticed the human through a chance observation during her meditations, when her mind accidentally brushed against his. It wasn't intentional. Her telepathic reach occasionally wandered, but the brief glimpse she'd caught had been enough to plant a seed of curiosity. While her people crafted sonnets of their triumphs and postured for admiration, Ethan was yelling at an uncooperative water filtration unit. "Come on, you rusted excuse for a glorified Brita filter. Work with me here," Ethan had muttered, banging a wrench against the machine. When this failed, he added dryly, "At least brake properly so I can file the paperwork to replace you." Zaya had laughed out loud. Her laughter startled a nearby Aethyran male, attempting to serenade her with a telepathic harp sonata, causing him to fumble his notes. She didn't care. This human had spoken with a kind of candid frustration that felt refreshingly real. Tonight, she stood under the glowing moons, her decision made. No more poems, no more serenades. She would meet this Ethan Clarke and find out for herself why his clumsy, sarcastic thoughts intrigued her more than all the hollow grandeur of her people. Ethan Clarke's journal entry, Day 142, of Research Mission Alpha V. Viridia is beautiful, like the kind of beautiful that makes you feel both awed and mildly insulted because nothing on Earth could ever compare. That said, Viridia is also annoying. The flora glows, the rivers glow, even the rocks glow. I'm starting to think this planet doesn't want anyone to sleep. Today, Clementine, the station AI, suggested I adjust my circadian rhythm to match the light cycle. Translation: stop whining and adapt. Thanks, Clem. Ethan scratched the stubble on his jaw, squinting at the uncooperative water filter that had become his nemesis. Being the sole xenobiologist stationed on Viridia was supposed to be a dream job, studying an uncharted ecosystem, documenting alien life forms, and enjoying the solitude. Except solitude wasn't as romantic as the recruitment posters suggested. It mostly involved talking to Clementine, who was programmed to assist but rarely comfort. "Clem, remind me why I signed up for this?" "Accessing motivational records." Searching. Result found. You believed it would be an incredible opportunity to advance human understanding of alien biospheres. Shall I replay your original enthusiasm? Ethan groaned. "Please don't." "As you wish. Would you like a reminder to hydrate instead?" "Clem, if you tell me to drink water one more time, I swear—" The sound of the outer door chime cut him off. Ethan froze. Visitors were unusual. He turned toward the monitor displaying the external camera feed and nearly dropped his wrench. Standing outside, bathed in the soft glow of Viridia's twin moons, was the most otherworldly figure he'd ever seen. Zaya waited, her heart racing, a strange sensation for an Aetheran, whose emotions were typically controlled with practiced precision. She had rehearsed her greeting, carefully crafting it to bridge the cultural gap between their species. She would introduce herself telepathically, projecting an image of peace and curiosity. The door hissed open, revealing Ethan. He was taller than she had expected, his hair an unruly mess, and his expression hovering somewhere between fascination and mild panic. Before she could send her telepathic greeting, Ethan blurted, hi. Can I help you? Zaya tilted her head, momentarily thrown off by the informality. Gathering her composure, she extended her mind, sending a carefully worded thought. Greetings, Ethan Clark. I am Zaya of the Ethyrans. I come in peace. Ethan jumped, looking wildly around. What? Who said that? Zaya blinked. I did. I spoke directly to your mind. Directly to... Oh, great. Now I'm hearing voices. Clem, are you recording this? Recording initiated, Clementine replied. Zaya frowned. It is not a voice. It is telepathy, a common practice among my kind. Ethan squinted at her. Telepathy, huh? Okay. If you're in my head, then what number am I thinking of? Zaya hesitated, confused. That is not how telepathy works. Ethan crossed his arms, looking unconvinced. Right. And you're definitely not a hallucination brought on by 2 straight weeks of terrible instant coffee. For a moment, the absurdity of the situation hung in the air. Then Zaya did something that shocked even herself. She laughed. It was a bright, musical sound, and Ethan found himself grinning despite his confusion. Well, he said, if you're real and not here to vaporize me, I guess I should offer you coffee. Zaya smiled. I would like that. Though I must warn you, I do not know what coffee is. Oh, you're in for a treat, Ethan said, already reaching for the kettle. Unless you have a thing against bitter, caffeinated beverages that taste slightly burnt. As Ethan brewed the coffee, Zaya marveled at his ease. He wasn't like the Atherans. There was no posturing, no formality, just a human being who, for some reason, had captivated her more than anyone else ever had. And as the night wore on, under the twin moons of Viridia, an unlikely connection began to form between the alien girl who wanted freedom and the human man who thought he wanted solitude. The morning on Viridia was no less dazzling than its twin moon nights. A soft haze hung in the air, refracting the light into iridescent hues that painted the alien forest with shifting rainbows. To Zaya, it was home, but as she sat in Ethan's cramped station holding a mug of bitter, overly sugared coffee, she realized how dull it all seemed compared to the absurd charm of this human. Ethan, for his part, was trying, and failing, not to stare. Zaya was, by far, the most surreal thing he'd encountered, and that included the phosphorescent squirrels that barked like dogs outside his lab window. Every now and then, she would tilt her head, the faint luminescent patterns on her skin shifting slightly, as if reacting to her mood. It was mesmerizing, but also made him question whether his coffee had been spiked by something alien in the air. So, Ethan began, leaning against his cluttered workbench, you're telling me you're the Zaya, the one everyone keeps gossiping about on those encrypted transmissions we've intercepted. You're like alien royalty or something? Zaya raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by the title. Not royalty. My father is a high counselor, yes, but our society does not have monarchs. My status is cultural, not political. Cultural status, huh? Is that why you've got a fan club? I mean, don't get me wrong, you're, not hard to look at, but these guys sound obsessive. Zaya sighed, swirling the coffee in her mug as if trying to divine answers in its dark depths. Atheran males are conditioned to pursue perfection. They see me as a symbol, not a person. It is exhausting. They recite poetry that is more plagiarized than inspired. They duel each other with weapons and words, and they act as though my choice must validate their existence. Ethan smirked. Sounds like you've been speed dating a bunch of intergalactic frat boys. Zaya blinked. What is a frat boy? Ethan chuckled, setting down his mug. Never mind. Let's just say they sound like a headache. And you came here because... Zaya's luminous gaze met his, and for a moment, the air in the cramped station felt heavier. Because you are not like them. You are different, honest, unconcerned with appearances or displays of power. Ethan scratched the back of his neck, suddenly feeling exposed. Well, I don't know about honest. I may have exaggerated a bit on my resume, but hey, I'm glad I'm not as bad as those guys. He paused, then added with a grin, "You sure about the whole unconcerned with appearances thing? I do have some pretty impressive bedhead in the mornings." Zaya laughed again, a sound that made the fluorescent light overhead flicker, as though even the station itself couldn't handle her. "It is not your bedhead that intrigues me." The conversation drifted, as conversations tend to lighter topics. Zaya was fascinated by human culture, its absurdities, contradictions, and quirks. Ethan did his best to explain things, though his explanations often raised more questions than they answered. "So you mean to say," Zaya began, her tone incredulous, "that humans voluntarily ingest toxins to alter their mental state for amusement?" "Yeah, pretty much," Ethan said, sipping his coffee. "And these parties you mentioned, they are gatherings where these toxins are consumed in large quantities?" "Exactly. And don't forget the bad dancing. That's a critical component." Zaya shook her head, her glowing strands of hair catching the light like fiber optics. "Your species is baffling." Ethan grinned. "You're not wrong. But hey, we also invented pizza, so I'd say it balances out." As the day wore on, Ethan decided to give Zaya a tour of the station. It wasn't much. A few research labs, a tiny kitchen, and a sleeping pod, barely big enough for one person. But Zaya seemed genuinely interested. She marveled at the human technology, though she couldn't suppress a few amused smiles. "This is your sanitation unit?" she asked, gesturing to the shower. "Yep," Ethan said proudly. "State of the art. Recirculates water to minimize waste." Zaya peered inside, her glowing eyes narrowing. "It looks uncomfortable." "Hey, it does the job. Plus, it beats bathing in alien rivers. Trust me, some of the local wildlife bites." The tour ended in the lab, where Ethan showed her his collection of samples, plants, minerals, and a few preserved specimens of the planet's more harmless creatures. Zaya leaned over a glass case containing a small, brightly colored amphibian. "This one," she said, pointing. "What is its purpose?" Ethan shrugged. "Mostly to hop around and look pretty, I think. It's harmless unless you lick it. Then it's hallucinogenic." Zaya's brows lifted. "Your species really does have a fixation with ingesting strange substances." Ethan laughed. "Fair point." As night fell, Ethan and Zia found themselves sitting outside the station, under the twin moons of Viridia. The air was cool, and the forest hummed softly with life. Zia sat cross-legged, her luminous skin blending seamlessly with the bioluminescent plants around her. Ethan leaned back against a rock, his expression unusually calm. "So," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "what's the plan? You gonna hang out here for a while, or is this a one-time visit?" Zaya hesitated, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I do not know. My people will not understand why I have come here. They will see it as a betrayal of tradition." "Well," Ethan said, "tradition's overrated. Besides, if they don't like it, they can come yell at me. I'm great at ignoring criticism." Zaya smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "You make it sound so simple." Ethan shrugged. "Life's complicated enough without overthinking everything. Sometimes you just have to roll with it." They sat in silence for a while longer, the twin moons casting their pale light over the alien landscape. For the first time in years, Zaya felt a sense of peace, not because of her surroundings, but because of the human sitting beside her, whose simple presence made the universe feel a little less vast and lonely. As the night deepened, Ethan glanced over at her, a mischievous glint in his eye. "So, you ever try pizza?" Zaya tilted her head. "What is pizza?" Ethan grinned. "Oh, you're in for a treat." Ethan was knee-deep in what could only be described as alien plumbing. The water filtration unit, his old nemesis, had gone on strike again, spewing more water out than it managed to filter in. He muttered curses under his breath as he wrestled with the tangle of tubes and wires, trying to remember why he'd thought being a xenobiologist on a far-off planet was a good idea. Zaya stood nearby, observing with an amused expression, her glowing skin casting faint patterns on the station walls. "You seem to be losing," she remarked, her voice tinged with playful sarcasm. "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Ethan shot back, wiping his face with a damp sleeve. "You know, for a highly advanced telepathic alien, you're surprisingly unhelpful when it comes to practical problems." Zaya stepped closer, crouching beside him with a mischievous smile. "Shall I offer encouragement? Humans appreciate words of affirmation, do they not?" "Not when the words are, 'You seem to be losing.'" He shook his head, but he couldn't suppress the grin tugging at his lips. "Don't suppose you've got any alien tech that can fix this mess?" Zaya tilted her head thoughtfully. "I could summon a harmonic stabilizer from my people, but it might accidentally disintegrate the entire station in the process." Ethan froze, wrench in hand. "Wait, seriously?" Her lips twitched. "Number." "But your reaction was delightful." Ethan groaned. "Great. The glowing space princess has a sense of humor. That's exactly what I needed today." By the time Ethan managed to get the filtration system functioning again, mostly, Zia had wandered into the lab, fascinated by the human gadgets and specimens scattered across the room. She paused in front of a jar containing a preserved alien plant, its luminescent tendrils still faintly pulsing. "This one," she said as Ethan joined her, "does it have a purpose beyond being unsettling?" "Actually, yeah," Ethan said, leaning on the counter. "That's a radian creeper. Its tendrils release a compound that accelerates healing. Pretty handy if you don't mind the fact that it smells like old gym socks." Zaya leaned closer to the jar, her glowing eyes narrowing. "Healing properties? Fascinating. Yet you trap it in a jar instead of letting it live." Ethan shrugged. "Science isn't always pretty. Besides, that one tried to wrap itself around my leg when I first found it. Had to pry it off with a stick." Zaya's laugh was like a soft melody, light and genuine. "You truly are unlike anyone I have ever met." "Is that a compliment?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. "Undecided," she replied, though her amused smile suggested otherwise. The day progressed with an odd rhythm, a blend of work, conversation, and the kind of quiet moments that felt both profound and ordinary. Zaya, curious about every detail of Ethan's life, peppered him with questions about Earth, its cultures, its landscapes, and its peculiarities. "So," Zaya said during a break, her glowing fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug, "why do humans joke? Even in dire circumstances, you find humor." Ethan considered this for a moment, leaning back in his chair. "I guess it's how we cope. When things get tough, laughing makes it feel less overwhelming. Like, yeah, the universe is a chaotic mess, but at least we can laugh at how ridiculous it all is." Zaya nodded slowly, as though filing the thought away. "In that case, I shall strive to improve my own humor." "Oh no," Ethan groaned. "Please don't. I'm not sure I can handle alien dad jokes." Zaya's brow furrowed. "What is a dad joke? Forget I said anything." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of violet and gold, Ethan and Zia ventured outside the station. Ethan had insisted she try something truly human, stargazing. They found a flat patch of ground near the station, and Ethan spread out an old blanket he used for fieldwork. Zaya hesitated before sitting, her glowing patterns dimming slightly in what Ethan had learned was the Etherean equivalent of uncertainty. "I do not often sit on the ground." "Well, consider this a cultural exchange," Ethan said, patting the blanket. "Besides, it's good for you, builds character." Zaya gave him a skeptical look, but finally sat, her elegant movements a sharp contrast to Ethan's casual sprawl. The two of them gazed up at the sky, where Viridia's twin moons hung like sentinels, surrounded by countless stars. "It's strange," Ethan said after a while. "Back on Earth, the stars felt so far away. But here, I don't know. It's like they're closer somehow." Zaya tilted her head, her glowing eyes reflecting the starlight. "Perhaps it is not the stars that feel closer, but the connections you make beneath them." Ethan glanced at her, surprised by the unexpected depth of her words. "That's poetic. Do all Ethyrans talk like that, or is it just you?" Zaya smiled faintly. "It is a trait of our kind, though most use it to impress rather than to connect." "Guess I lucked out then," Ethan said, grinning. "I get the one Ethyran who talks poetry, but still knows how to make a joke." They fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the soft hum of the forest around them. Zaya turned her gaze to Ethan, her expression thoughtful. "You asked earlier if I had a plan. Truthfully, I do not. I only know that I feel at peace here in a way I have not felt in a very long time." "Well," Ethan said, leaning back on his elbows, "you're welcome to stay as long as you want. The station's not exactly luxurious, but it's got running water and bad coffee. What more could you need?" Zaya chuckled softly. "I appreciate your hospitality, though I suspect my presence will not go unnoticed for long." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You mean your fan club?" "Yes," Zaya said, her tone growing serious. "They will not take kindly to my absence, and if they discover I am here—" Ethan sat up, his grin fading. "What happens then?" Zaya's luminous gaze met his. "I do not know, but I fear it will not be peaceful." Ethan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "Well," he said, forcing a smile, "if they show up, I'll just tell them you're busy. Maybe they'll take a number and wait their turn." Zaya's lips twitched into a smile, but the worry in her eyes remained. "You truly are unlike anyone I have ever met, Ethan Clark." "Yeah, well," Ethan said, lying back down, "just wait until you try pizza. Then you'll see what humanity's really about." For the rest of the night, they lay under the stars, sharing stories and laughter, even as the shadow of what might come loomed just out of sight. Ethan's morning started the way most did on Viridia, with a sharp crack and an ominous hissing sound. The station's alarm blared to life, sending him tumbling out of his cot with all the grace of a startled cat. Grabbing his communicator, he stumbled into the main lab, squinting at the flashing console. "Please tell me that's just the coffee maker acting up again," he muttered, tapping at the screen. Zaya appeared in the doorway, her hair glowing faintly in the dim light. She was impossibly calm, holding a mug of coffee like it was a casual Tuesday. "Your coffee maker does not typically cause seismic disturbances, does it?" Ethan sighed. "Not usually, no. Let's see what we're dealing with." The console displayed a series of alerts. A ship, large, sleek, and unmistakably Etheran, had breached Viridia's atmosphere and was making a beeline for his location. "Well," Ethan said, leaning back in his chair, "that's probably not Amazon delivering my replacement filters." Zaya stepped closer, her serene demeanor faltering. "It is an Etheran reconnaissance vessel. They must have tracked me here." "Great," Ethan muttered. "Guess the Intergalactic fan club found you after all." Zaya's expression turned serious. "You must remain calm. I will handle this." "Handle this?" "Zaya, they're probably here with lasers and angry poetry. What am I supposed to do? Offer them coffee and a handshake?" Zaya didn't answer, her gaze fixed on the console. "Prepare yourself, Ethan Clark. They are persistent." And the ship landed with a dramatic flare, kicking up dust and sending the local wildlife scurrying for cover. Ethan and Zaya watched from the edge of the station as the Etheran craft extended its ramp, revealing three figures descending in synchronized precision. The leader of the group was tall, even by Etheran standards, with metallic patterns across his face that shimmered like liquid silver. His companions flanked him, their stances rigid and their glowing eyes locked on Zaya. Zaya Tavor, the leader called out, his voice echoing unnaturally in the still air. You have been requested to return to Ethera. Your absence disrupts the harmony of our kind. Zaya stepped forward, her posture regal. My absence disrupts nothing, Varric. It is the obsession of those like you that creates imbalance. Varric's gaze shifted to Ethan, his expression flickering with disdain. And this human? What role does he play in your rebellion? Ethan raised a hand in an awkward wave. Hey there, I'm Ethan. Big fan of, diplomacy and not getting disintegrated. You? Varric's lips curled in a sneer. You allow yourself to be distracted by this primitive? It is beneath you, Zia. Hey, Ethan protested. I'm not a primitive. I've got a PhD and a decent sense of humor, thank you very much. Zaya's glowing patterns flared faintly, a sign Ethan had come to associate with annoyance, or maybe amusement. It was hard to tell. Ethan Clarke is more than you could comprehend, Varric, and I will not return to Ethera simply because you demand it. Varric's silver patterns darkened, a sign of his growing frustration. You risk war for this defiance. War? Ethan interjected, holding up a hand. Let's pump the brakes here, shiny guy. Can't we just talk this out? Maybe over some tea or a nice game of charades? Varric ignored him, his focus locked on Zaya. You will come with us, willingly or not. Zaya's gaze hardened. I will do no such thing. The situation might have escalated further if not for the sudden, inexplicable appearance of a Viridian wildling, a creature resembling a cross between a kangaroo and a jellyfish. It bounced into the clearing, its translucent limbs wobbling comically as it let out a high-pitched trill. The Etheran guards froze, clearly uncertain how to react. Ethan, unable to resist, whispered to Zaya, "Is it just me, or does that thing look like it escaped from a cartoon?" Zaya suppressed a smile. It is harmless, though quite curious. The wildling hopped closer, apparently unfazed by the tense standoff. It paused in front of Varric, tilting its gelatinous head as though inspecting him. Then, without warning, it leaped onto his chest, wrapping its wobbly limbs around him in what could only be described as an alien hug. Ethan doubled over with laughter as Varric flailed, trying to pry the creature off. Oh man, this is gold. Do Etherans not have a protocol for surprise cuddles? Zaya shook her head, her amusement evident. Wildlings are not native to our world. It seems Varric is unprepared. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to assist their leader or maintain their stoic composure. Meanwhile, Varric managed to dislodge the wildling, which trilled indignantly before bouncing away into the forest. Is this what you choose, Zaya? Varric demanded, his voice tinged with fury. To associate with chaos and absurdity? Zaya stepped forward, her expression calm but unyielding. What I choose, Varric, is freedom. I am not bound by the expectations of our people, nor will I be swayed by your threats. Varric's glowing patterns flickered, his frustration evident. You will regret this. Ethan, still catching his breath from laughing, waved cheerfully. Bye, Varric. Don't let the wildlings hug you on the way out. As the Etheran ship ascended into the sky, Ethan turned to Zaya, his grin fading slightly. So, what now? Do you think they'll come back? They will, Zaya said, her tone resolute. But we will be ready. Ready? Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't exactly have a stockpile of alien weaponry lying around. Zaya smiled faintly. You have something far more powerful, Ethan Clarke. And what's that? She placed a glowing hand on his shoulder, her gaze steady. Your capacity for hope and humor. It will serve us well in the challenges to come. Ethan blinked, then chuckled. No pressure, huh? As the stars returned to their tranquil dance above them, the two of them stood side by side, a human and an alien, preparing for whatever the universe decided to throw at them next. Ethan was elbow-deep in breakfast, when the station's alarm chimed. Again. He groaned, poking at the stubborn toaster that had just charred his bread into something resembling carbonized rubble. Seriously? He muttered, waving the smoke away. The universe can't even let me have a decent breakfast anymore? Zaya appeared in the doorway, radiant as ever, though her expression was more amused than concerned. Is this another human ritual I should understand? The burning of food as an offering to the morning? Yeah, it's a sacred tradition, Ethan quipped, pointing at the smoldering toast. We call it disaster dining. The alarm blared again, cutting off his sarcasm. Zaya tilted her head, the patterns on her skin dimming briefly as she processed the alert. This signal is unfamiliar. It does not originate from my people. Ethan frowned, abandoning the ruined breakfast as he moved to the console. A strange energy signature was pinging the station's sensors, emanating from a nearby ridge. Well, that's new, he said, scanning the data. Looks like some kind of tech. Not a Theron, though, something older. Zaya leaned closer, her glowing eyes narrowing. We should investigate. It could be significant or dangerous. Right, Ethan said, grabbing his gear. Because dangerous is exactly what my morning was missing. The ridge was a short hike from the station, though the uneven terrain made it feel longer. Ethan stumbled over rocks and roots, muttering under his breath as Zaya floated, because of course she floated beside him with infuriating ease. Enjoying the view? He asked, panting as they reached the top. It is quite picturesque, Zaya replied, glancing at him with a faint smile, though your coordination leaves much to be desired. Thanks, Ethan grumbled, brushing dirt off his pants. I'll add mocked by an alien princess to my growing list of humiliations. Below them, nestled in a shallow ravine, was the source of the signal, a circular structure half buried in the rocky soil. Its metallic surface was tarnished with age, etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly. Okay, Ethan said, pulling out his scanner. What are we looking at here? Ancient alien Wi-Fi router? Galactic Roomba? Zaya's expression turned serious as she approached the structure, her fingers lightly tracing the symbols. This is a Theron, but it predates my people's current era. It is an artifact of our ancestors. Great, Ethan said. So it's an ancient alien mystery. I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong with poking it. Zaya shot him a look, but said nothing, her focus on the artifact. The energy signature suggests it is dormant, but intact. If we can activate it... Activate it? Ethan interrupted. Is that really a good idea? I mean, for all we know, it could be an interstellar bug zapper. Zaya raised an eyebrow. Do you always assume the worst? Only when ancient alien tech is involved, Ethan said. Or when toast is involved, apparently. Despite Ethan's reservations, they worked together to decipher the artifact's symbols. Zaya's knowledge of her people's history was invaluable, though she occasionally struggled to explain concepts in human terms. What do you mean it sings to the stars? Ethan asked, staring at her in confusion. Zaya sighed. The Aetheran word encompasses communication, resonance, and harmonic energy. Your language is limited. Hey, my language does just fine, Ethan said. We've got over 100 ways to describe coffee, for starters. Zaya ignored him, focusing instead on aligning the artifact's glowing panels. When the last symbol clicked into place, the structure hummed to life, sending a pulse of light into the sky. Was it supposed to do that? Ethan asked, stepping back instinctively. Zaya didn't answer. Her glowing patterns brightened as she reached out, her hand hovering over the artifact's surface. The hum grew louder, and Ethan felt a strange vibration in the air, like the resonance of a tuning fork. Then, abruptly, the light dimmed, and the artifact fell silent. Well, Ethan said after a long pause, that was anticlimactic. Zaya tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. It was not a failure. The artifact responded. It merely requires... Something more. Something more? Ethan asked. Like what? Batteries? An emotional pep talk? Before Zaya could respond, a new sound echoed through the ravine, a low rhythmic thrum that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. That's not the artifact, he said, glancing around nervously. Zaya's gaze sharpened. Number that is a ship. A shadow passed overhead, and Ethan looked up to see a sleek black vessel descending rapidly. It wasn't a Theron. Its angular design and matte finish were entirely unfamiliar. The ship landed with a hiss of hydraulics, its ramp lowering to reveal three figures in dark, featureless armor. They moved with unnerving precision, their weapons trained on Ethan and Zaya. Well, Ethan said, raising his hand slowly. Guess the universe heard I was bored. Zaya stepped in front of him, her posture protective. You do not belong here, she said, her voice firm. The lead figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised a device, a small glowing orb that emitted a high-pitched whine. Ethan winced, feeling a sharp pressure in his head. Okay, that's rude, he muttered, clutching his temples. Zaya's glowing patterns flared brightly, and the pressure abruptly stopped. The lead figure staggered, its device sparking and fizzling. Nice, Ethan said, giving Zaya a thumbs up. Can you do that again? Maybe with more explosions? The armored figures regrouped, their movements more cautious now. Zaya's stance remained steady, her glowing eyes locked on them. They are not a Theron, she said quietly, but they have knowledge of our artifacts. We must not let them take it. Right, Ethan said, glancing at the artifact. And how exactly are we supposed to stop them? Throw rocks? Zaya didn't answer. Instead, she extended her hand toward the artifact, her glowing patterns pulsing in time with its faint hum. The air around them seemed to ripple, and Ethan felt a strange energy surge through him. What are you doing? He asked, his voice tinged with both awe and panic. Trust me, Zaya said. Ethan sighed, famous last words. As the armored figures advanced, the artifact flared to life, sending a wave of energy that knocked them off their feet. Ethan blinked, momentarily blinded by the light. When his vision cleared, the figures were retreating, their ship lifting off in a hasty escape. Well, Ethan said, exhaling in relief. That was intense. Zaya turned to him, her expression calm but determined. This is only the beginning, Ethan Clarke. They will return. Of course they will, Ethan said, slumping against a rock. Because nothing says fun like being hunted by mysterious space ninjas. Despite the danger, he couldn't help but smile. Life with Zaya was never boring. The station had seen better days. After the encounter with the mysterious armored figures, Ethan spent the morning patching up what he could and muttering unflattering things about intergalactic trespassers. Zaya, meanwhile, sat cross-legged in the center of the main lab, her glowing patterns flickering as she meditated. You know, Ethan said, tightening a bolt on the station's exterior, if I had known working on an alien research station came with a side of space warfare, I would have negotiated for hazard pay. Zaya opened one eye, her expression unreadable. Your humor is your defense mechanism, is it not? Yep, Ethan said, wiping grease from his hands. That, and the occasional sarcastic comment, very effective against overwhelming existential dread. Zaya closed her eye again, the faint hum of her energy filling the silence. Ethan watched her for a moment before turning back to the console. The scans from the artifact were still running, but they didn't offer much clarity. All right, he said, pulling up a chair. Let's talk strategy. Those space ninjas, who were they, and why did they want the artifact? Zaya's voice was calm but firm. They are not of Aethera, but they have studied our ways. Their interest in the artifact suggests they seek to exploit its power. Great, Ethan muttered. So we're dealing with alien scavengers. Any chance we can, I don't know, outsmart them? Set up some traps? Maybe a giant pit covered with leaves? Zaya's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Your creativity is commendable, though perhaps not practical. Their brainstorming session was interrupted by the station's proximity alarm. Ethan groaned, slumping back in his chair. "Let me guess," he said. "More uninvited guests?" Zaya stood, her glowing patterns brightening. "It is an Athyran signal, not Varric's ship, but familiar nonetheless." Ethan frowned. "So, friends or foes?" Zaya tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "That remains to be seen." The Athyran ship landed with far less drama than the previous encounters, its design elegant and unassuming. Two figures emerged, their glowing patterns similar to Zaya's, but more muted. Ethan watched from a safe distance as Zaya stepped forward to greet them. The taller of the two Athyrans spoke first, his tone clipped. "Zaya Tavor, you have drawn much attention with your actions." "I act according to my principles," Zaya replied evenly. "If that draws attention, so be it." The shorter Athyran, a woman with intricate silver patterns, studied Ethan with open curiosity. "And this is the human you have chosen to ally with?" Ethan gave an awkward wave. "Hi, Ethan Clark, professional toast burner and occasional alien trouble magnet." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Your humor is peculiar." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Ethan said. "So, what brings you to our little corner of chaos?" The taller Athyran ignored him, addressing Zaya instead. "You must understand the gravity of your situation. The artifact you have activated is not merely an heirloom. It is a beacon, a signal to forces far beyond our control." Zaya's gaze didn't waver. "I am aware of its significance. That is precisely why I must protect it." Ethan cleared his throat. Sorry to interrupt the dramatic alien standoff, but if this thing is so dangerous, shouldn't we, I don't know, turn it off?" The Athyran woman shook her head. "It cannot be deactivated now. The signal has been sent. Those who seek its power will come." Ethan sighed. "Of course they will, because nothing says fun like hosting a cosmic treasure hunt." With the artifact's activation attracting attention, they needed a plan. The Athyran visitors, Alrian and Meras, reluctantly agreed to assist. Ethan, ever the optimist, decided to take charge of fortifying the station. "Okay," he said, pacing the room. "Here's the plan. We reinforce the station's defenses, set up some traps, and hope for the best. Any objections?" Meras raised a hand. "What are traps?" Ethan blinked. "You don't have traps on Athera? Like nets? Pits? Stuff that stops bad guys?" "We do not rely on such crude measures," Meras replied. "Well, you're in my world now," Ethan said, grabbing a toolbox. "And here, crude measures are all we've got." The next few hours were a whirlwind of improvised engineering and questionable decisions. Ethan rigged up an energy field around the station, using spare parts and a healthy dose of duct tape. Zaya and the Athyrans focused on calibrating the artifact, ensuring its energy didn't spiral out of control. At one point, Ethan found himself explaining the concept of camouflage to Alrian. "So, you're telling me," Alrian said, holding a bundle of leaves, "that these will hide me?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "It's simple, but effective. Just stick to the bushes and don't make any noise." Alrian looked skeptical but complied, draping himself in foliage. Ethan couldn't resist snapping a photo with his communicator. "Gotta document this for posterity," he said, grinning. As night fell, the station's defenses were in place, and the team gathered in the main lab. The artifact pulsed softly, its light casting eerie shadows on the walls. Ethan leaned back in his chair, sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee. "So, what's the plan when the bad guys show up? Do we fight, run, or try to negotiate?" Zaya's gaze was steady. "We will defend the artifact. It must not fall into their hands." "Right," Ethan said, setting his mug down. "No pressure or anything." The room fell silent, the weight of the situation settling over them. Ethan glanced around at his unlikely companions, an alien princess, 2 skeptical Aetherans, and a glowing relic of unimaginable power. "Well," he said, breaking the tension, "if we're going to face down a horde of intergalactic treasure hunters, we might as well do it in style. Anyone up for some snacks?" Maris raised an eyebrow. "Snacks?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "Trust me, everything's better with snacks." Despite the looming threat, Zaya smiled faintly. "Your optimism is peculiar, Ethan Clark." "Peculiar is my middle name," Ethan replied. As they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how far he'd come, from an ordinary scientist to a reluctant participant in an interstellar drama. Whatever came next, he was ready. Sort of. The storm arrived at midnight. Ethan stood at the observation deck, watching as the horizon shimmered with incoming ships. The station's defenses hummed faintly beneath his feet, a patchwork of improvised tech and sheer desperation. Around him, the others prepared for the fight. Zaya stood by the artifact, her glowing patterns bright and steady, a stark contrast to Ethan's jittery energy. Alrian and Miras flanked her, their stances resolute despite their earlier skepticism of this human-made fortress. "This is it," Ethan said, forcing a grin. "The grand finale. Think we can charge tickets?" Zaya turned, her gaze soft but serious. "Humor will not shield you from what comes." "True," Ethan admitted, tapping the wrench strapped to his belt, "but it might keep me sane." The first wave came in silence, a sleek black ship descending like a predatory bird. Ethan's makeshift energy field held, the ship's attempts to breach it repelled with satisfying sparks. "Ha!" Ethan shouted, pumping his fist. "Score 1 for human ingenuity." But his triumph was short-lived. A second ship followed, then a third, each testing the defenses with growing intensity. Inside the station, the artifact pulsed in response, its light growing brighter with each attack. "They're trying to overload the field," Zaya said, her voice calm despite the urgency. "It will not hold forever." "Great," Ethan muttered, scrambling to adjust the power levels. "Any brilliant ideas? Because I'm running low on duct tape." As the defenses strained, Zaya stepped forward, her glowing patterns flaring in intricate, mesmerizing sequences. The artifact responded, emitting a wave of energy that rippled through the station. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, shielding his eyes from the light. "I am harmonizing with the artifact," Zaya said, her voice distant. "It can amplify my power, but only if I maintain focus." Ethan hesitated, torn between admiration and worry. "And what happens if you can't maintain focus?" Zaya glanced at him, her expression softening. "Then you must protect it in my stead." "No pressure," Ethan said, though his heart tightened. The battle raged on, the air thick with tension. Despite their differences, the makeshift team worked together seamlessly, Maris and Alrian coordinating the station's defenses, Ethan patching up weak points, and Zaya holding the artifact's power in check. Through it all, Ethan found himself marveling at how far they'd come. Weeks ago, he'd been an ordinary scientist, content with quiet routines and burnt toast. Now, he was standing shoulder to shoulder with beings from another world, fighting to protect something far bigger than himself. The turning point came when the lead ship deployed its ground team, 4 armored figures armed with advanced weaponry. They moved with precision, bypassing the energy field and heading straight for the station. "Time for Plan B," Ethan said, grabbing his makeshift weapon, a metal pipe wrapped in glowing wires. "You have a Plan B?" Maris asked, her tone incredulous. "Not really," Ethan admitted. "But it sounds cooler than saying, 'I'm winging it.'" The confrontation was chaotic, a blur of energy blasts and improvised tactics. Ethan found himself face to face with one of the intruders, who raised a sleek weapon aimed directly at his chest. Hi," Ethan said, raising his hands. "Quick question. Do you guys take bribes?" The armored figure hesitated just long enough for Zaya to intervene. A wave of energy rippled from her, disarming the attacker and sending them stumbling back. "You must leave," Zaya said, her voice carrying an authority that even Ethan hadn't heard before. The figures regrouped, their leader stepping forward. "We will not leave without the artifact." Zaya's patterns flared brighter, her presence almost blinding. "Then you leave with nothing." The artifact's final surge was both beautiful and terrifying, a crescendo of light and sound that shook the station to its core. Ethan felt the energy pulse through him, a strange warmth that erased his fear. When the light faded, the intruders were gone. Their ships retreated, vanishing into the darkness. The station was silent, save for the faint hum of the artifact, now dormant once more. Ethan collapsed into a chair, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "So," he said, looking at Zaya. "Did we win?" Zaya smiled, the glow in her patterns softening. "For now." The aftermath was strangely quiet. Alrian and Maros departed the next day, their skepticism replaced by a quiet respect. Ethan stood with Zaya on the observation deck, watching their ship disappear into the stars. "Think we'll see them again?" Ethan asked. "Perhaps," Zaya said. "Aetherans rarely forget those who stand beside them." "Good to know," Ethan said, leaning against the railing. "So what happens now? You going back to Aethera?" Zaya shook her head, her gaze steady. "My place is here, for as long as you will have me." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm flattered. But why?" Zaya's smile was soft, almost shy. "Because in all my travels, I have never encountered anyone quite like you, Ethan Clarke. You are unpredictable, infuriating, and deeply remarkable." Ethan felt his cheeks flush. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I say no?" The life on the station returned to its strange, chaotic normalcy. The artifact remained dormant, its secrets locked away for another time. Ethan and Zia settled into a rhythm, their partnership marked by equal parts banter and mutual admiration. One evening, as they sat on the deck watching the stars, Ethan handed Zaya a plate of toast, perfectly golden for once. "A human delicacy," he said with a grin. "No burnt offerings this time." Zaya accepted it with a graceful nod, her patterns glowing faintly in amusement. "I am honored." As they ate in companionable silence, the stars above seemed a little brighter, their light a reminder of the vast, beautiful universe that had brought them together. For Ethan Clarke, the journey wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready for whatever came next.